live from Huntertown, Indiana. It's Soarin on the air. So today we have another interesting topic. We're going to talk about hearing. You know, we've had a lot of different topics, so you kids get out your notebooks, okay? You got to take lots of notes today because there's a lot of information here. So, well, let me get rid of this. It gets in my way. So, today, hearing. The topic of today is hearing. We've heard a lot about hearing in birds. You know, we've heard stories about how owls can find things in the dark. We have heard how the birds find their worms and things like that. So we're going to talk about a couple of these different subjects. So we'll just start off here. So some of the things that we've heard is things like barn owls. Oh, where's my barn owl here? My barn owls, they can find mice in total silence. Or total darkness rather, right? So it can be totally dark, and they use these super sensitive ears. I'm sorry, we're talking about you, Monet. So it's super sensitive ears with all the different things that nature has given them so that they can find prey in the dark. Not only can she find prey in the dark, but she can also adjust for the prey's movement. So not only can she find the prey, but she can also localize it. So as she's flying down to catch her prey, she can make adjustments into her flight. So she can find the prey out there, mainly mice, voles, sometimes large insects, that kind of thing. We also know that some birds, like, hey, they're around here. Come on.
We'll find them.
Like our eagle owl, camera shy, you know. So birds like our eagle owl and great horned owls, they can actually find prey 2-3 feet underneath the snow. So great gray owls that are found out west, you know, or up in the north, they can find prey in the middle of winter, deep in the snow, where there's no telltale signs that there's any prey around, but they can still hear them. Even the birds like our robins, they can actually hear worms crawling through the ground. So birds have a very sense of hearing. And also, you know, we know that birds can discriminate or hear sounds better than we can. So we know that they can process sounds twice as fast as humans. So we may miss a lot of stuff out there that's going on because it's masked by noise from leaves moving or traffic and things like that. But the birds have a better sense of being able to process the sounds. And also, birds can do something that we wish we could do, and that's help to suppress ambient noise, okay? So things like noise that's generated when you're flying. Well, most of us don't do any flying, but when you stick your head out the car window, you're going 60 miles an hour, there's a lot of noise and you can't hear anything, okay? But birds, when they're going 15, 20 miles an hour with all that wind going past them, they can suppress that ambient noise that surrounds them. So anyway, some basic things about hearing. So, okay, if you want to go back to bed, you want to go back to bed? Okay. Give a hoot. Okay. So we're going to do a little bit of science first. Okay, a little bit of lecturing so that you can all get on the same line. And I got pictures of him later. Okay. So, anyways, so sound. What is sound? Sound's very important because without sound you don't have hearing. Okay, you don't have a need for hearing. So sound is a term that we use to describe what is perceived when sound passes through the air and hits our ear, or any other medium, because you can have sound actually it's transmitted through solid objects too. So sound is a term we use to describe the perceived, what we perceive as when the sound wave reaches us. So sound waves have several different features to them. One is they have pitch and they have loudness, okay? So we're kind of, most of us know about loudness, you know, so if you've been over to a rock concert or something like that, there's a lot of loudness, okay, really, or when you stand next to one of the noisy motorcycles that go through here in Huntertown, that's loudness, you know. And then of course there's softness, you know, when you're standing out here at 6 o'clock in the morning, there's nothing going on and the wind just gently goes across our prairie, you know, there's hardly any sound at all, so not very loud. But there's also pitch, and we talk about pitch, or sometimes we refer to it as frequency. So, when we're talking, like we are talking right now, I'm talking somewhere in about the 1 kilohertz range, something like that. There's pitch, on the piano. So as you play the scale, you hear the sound go up in frequency. So, anyways, that's pitch, or basically it's frequency, and of course that's also related to wavelength. We'll talk about that in a minute. So frequencies that humans can hear is about 20 to 20,000 hertz, okay? And dogs can hear up to 40,000 hertz. And there are some animals that go higher and some that go lower. So we have some animals that actually go down in the 20 hertz range, and we have some animals that go way up in the 50, 60, even 100 kilohertz range. So things like bats, porpoises, and things like that really have high frequency, and things like elephants, rhinoceroses, and hippopotamus have very low frequencies. So anyway, so we have a lot of different frequencies, and like I said, now loudness is measured in decibels, and not to get too scientific about it, but it's a way of measuring sound, and it's actually a logarithmic type thing. So for doing measurements, but basically what you want to know, it's 0 is the baseline, which is no sound at all, and so 130 decibels. That would be up to the point where it'd be painful to a human being. To give you an idea, if you had a rooster standing right next to your head and it crowed, that would probably be somewhere in the neighborhood of 110 to 120 dB. And that would be very painful to you, so. And we, of course, we operate around 60 dB, 60 to 70 dB, and a few loudmouths are up there at 80 and 90. So, here's a diagram to give you an idea about how sound waves are made. Sound waves are made up of two different parts. We have a compression stage, right, and then you have a stage where there is no sound or there's no pressure or anything like that. So you have the air molecules being compressed, okay, as the wave goes through them, and then you have a depression stage where there is no energy there and it recedes. So it's kind of like waves going in and out. You've seen them there on the lake or the ocean, waves going in and out. So you have your peaks and you have your valleys, okay? And so the frequency is how often a peak occurs, right? So the lower the frequency, the fewer the peaks per second, or whatever you're measuring. You could be measuring in hours, fortnights, or something like that. But basically the scientists do it in what they call hertz or cycles per second. How many times does that peak recur? Okay, so we have the peaks and we have the valleys, and between the peaks and the valleys is the wavelength. Okay, so a typical wavelength of something like let's see, 1,000 kilohertz would be about a meter. All right, so 3 feet for you English speaking, but a meter for the scientific world. Okay, so there's different wavelengths, and of course that makes it a little bit of difference in how we hear things and how we process things. The wavelength, how long it takes between the peaks. And don't worry, there's going to be a test Monday on all this. So
we just lost all our viewers. No, I'm only kidding.
Yeah, I'm sure. So anyway, there's some things I'm going to tell you that later on we'll talk about how birds use these things or why birds do these things. So anyways, one of the things about loudness is it decreases 6 dB for each doubling of the distance. So if I'm talking at 60 dB, 1 meter out here, it's going to go, be 54 dB. Another meter out, it's going to be 48 dB. Another meter out. So every time you go out, the sound reduces by a great amount. So loudness decreases 6 dB for each doubling of the distance. So, okay. The other thing that you should know and should be interested in, as frequency increases, sound absorption increases. Okay. So and the loudness decreases, of course, and you know that, of course, because you stand, so when you go to the rave concert, it's very loud. When you go out to the parking lot, it's not as loud. And when you get home, if your hearing's still intact, it's really not loud at all. But also the sounds that you hear, like the frequency, shrill whistles, you can only hear those for a short distance. Okay, but the noise that's coming off a diesel engine or something like that, it just travels and travels and travels. So so in the morning when the little rice burner goes blasting past your house, you hardly notice that sound. But when that big diesel truck goes by, you can hear it, and it shakes the whole house. So a lot of times we can hear sounds of explosions or other things that happen. Those travel great distances because the low frequency tends to penetrate better, and the high frequencies tend to dissipate faster. Let's see, so now sounds basically are made up of two parts, or actually several parts really. You have the fundamental frequency of what you're putting out, and then you have harmonics of that fundamental frequency. So if you have 1,000 hertz, okay, as a sound that you make on the piano, bing, okay, so you have harmonics of that. So you have 2,000 hertz, 4,000 hertz, etc. And that all combines together, plus also the rattling of the piano, say, there's some loose parts in there that kind of rattle and shake, or we have things like noise in the ambient area. So so that all adds in to the sounds that we perceive, that we hear. And that's why sometimes, when you're listening to somebody and they're talking, I don't have pure harmonics or pure fundamentals. I have a whole bunch of harmonics in there. And then I got the other things, let's see, whatever's straining down my throat adds into the sounds that I'm making. You've heard people, their dentures are loose, and they make all kinds of sibilant sounds, so they sound a little squeaky, that kind of thing. Or you got bad drainage in your nose, so you got that all that mucus and stuff in there, and it's rattling around in there. So there's a lot of things that go into making the sound that we hear. I think I'm telling you more than you really want to know, aren't I? So anyways, we'll start off with the human ear. Most of you guys have had this in science class, right? Well, hopefully most of you remember this from science class. Things haven't changed much. So we have an outer ear, okay? So we have an outer ear. One of the things that they have out there is a pinna, okay? And that's a kind of an important thing, as I'm going to discuss a little later. So they have the pinna. So you thought that was an earlobe and some other stuff, or something to hang your decorations on, like earrings. So
I don't know who that would be.
I know, but anyways, so you have things like that. Then you have a tube that goes in, okay, the way that the sound path goes in, and then finally at the end of that you have an eardrum, and an eardrum is fastened or has three little bones behind it in the middle of the ear, okay. We used to call them the hammer, the anvil, and the stirrup, but they have scientific names for them: the mollinus, the incus, and the stapes. So they have, okay, so that transmits vibrations from the eardrum over to the cochlea. There we go. I'm getting ahead of myself. Cochlea. Okay. And inside the cochlea is a little bit some fluid that vibrates, and that in turn goes onto some cilia, makes the cilia wave back and forth, and those are tied to nerve endings. And the nerve endings go into this auditory nerve that goes to the brain. And so the vibration of the cilia go to the brain, and then that's all transmitted into the sounds that we hear. So that's basically how the ear works. Also, you have the eustachian tube that goes down from the ear down into your throat. And you know how painful it is if you get a little infection there in your sore throat, you can't hear right because the eustachian tube is swollen or something like that. And so there's that eustachian tube is important because it allows us to feed back sounds from ourselves into our ear so that we can hear ourselves talk. So anyways, next slide. Okay, next slide. Okay. So here's a comparison of a human ear and a bird ear. And you'll notice that the biggest difference right away is the fact that we don't have those three bones in the middle, the hammer, anvil, and stirrups. Instead, we have one ear that's called a columnide, okay? And it's just if you will, a pillar. So it just goes from the eardrum right over to the cochlea, and so it transmits the vibrations very quickly. So what happens a lot of times with people is that they get some kind of an infection or something, and they may have gotten impacted by something on the side of the head, and it actually breaks these bones, and but the birds don't have this problem because it's just one solid piece that goes across. And so and it goes through this middle ear connection. And again, you have this eustachian tube comes down, and proportionally it's much bigger than our eustachian tube. And this serves a purpose later on that we'll talk about. So I know, give you more information than you really need to know. Okay, next slide. Next slide. So here's an ear hole. This is on the side of a hawk, and he didn't like doing this, so he closed his eyes. So, so if you took a hawk head and made it about as big as my head, okay? Well, in fact, it's almost the same size. You can see this ear hole is proportionally bigger than my ear hole, okay? So that means he's getting more sounds in there. And so more sounds can get into the head or into the ear itself, or the middle ear. Now, birds' hearing, okay, which is what we came here to talk about besides sounds and all that good stuff. Birds recognize absolute pitch. In other words, they can hear a single note, that was a single note, okay? They can hear that. Whereas humans, we don't do that. We hear sounds of relative pitch. And that's, so they hear pitch only as one note or one frequency. We hear a tone, and we can relate that tone to a harmonic of it. So that's like a lot of our music, that we have. We'll do one verse at say an A or something like that, and then we'll do the next verse at a higher pitch, next step up. So so it'll go up one octave. Okay, so an octave being 8 notes. So we go up one octave, and we play the same tune, and we know it's the same because it sounds like the first one, but it's just but birds don't hear that way. They only hear single notes all the way up through, so they don't hear harmonics like we do. They don't relate this sound over here, the second octave up, to the first octave. Okay, so let's see. But they can recognize timbre. All right, so that's the fundamental note combined with harmonics. And sometimes you guys, you're musicians, you know about timbre. You guys that aren't, don't worry about it. Just remember, it's the fundamental note plus the harmonics. Okay, so they combine together. So anyways, birds can hear shorter notes than we can. Humans process sounds in bytes of about 1/20th of a second, but they can process notes at 10 times that rate. In other words, 1/200th of a second. So they can chop up what they're hearing into smaller bits, and they can process it. So basically, when we hear a note, one sound, they can hear 10 sounds. Okay, so they have more discrimination, if you will. They can separate out all these different tones you hear. Remember, I talked about sounds being a mixture. When we hear stuff, it's a mixture of things. It's a fundamental plus harmonics plus noise. It all goes in there, summates and produces a tone. Whereas when they hear it, they're chopping it up into finer parts. And we can talk about this because when you get into sampling of sounds and things like that, it comes into communications. A lot of what you hear, like on your phone there, your phone doesn't transmit everything you say. It probably only transmits about 1/5 of what you say. So what the phone does is it goes and it chops everything up and only sends just certain bits of the information. And I think my phone from time to time sends nothing, but that's another story. That's for AT&T to work out. But so what they do is they call that sampling. You sample the sound, and then you only transmit the important parts of the sound. So a lot of it is left there, in the bottom of your phone, and that's why you have to do a cleanup every so often. I'm joking. Okay. So some of the other things about hearing. Birds have covering feathers that protect their ears from air turbulence while they're flying. These are called the auricular feathers. Okay. So a lot of times these feathers actually cover over the ear, and they are movable, moving up, down, that kind of thing. And so when they're flying, those flaps, if you will, go against the ear, cover it up, keeps this swishing sound. Oh, not again. What did she feed him this morning?
Who knows?
Okay.
Oops.
we have a lot of cleanup to do here today. So they have certain feathers that are designed to quiet down the sound so that when they are flying, they can hear what's going on, so that you don't get the swishing sound. So it's kind of like when you stick your head out the car window going 60 miles an hour, you get a swishing sound because you don't have irregular feathers to cover your ears. But if you put your hand over your ear, that reduces the sound coming from the swishing air. Let's see. They have facial disc, you know. I guess I can get one of my birds back. We'll do facial disc real fast. Okay. Almost on cue. So they have facial discs, and these are made of what they call phyloplumes. Those are special feathers that are designed to allow sounds to pass through, to go back to their ears. And if they had feathers all the way across their face, they probably couldn't hear as well. But this way, with their, okay, shy.
He wants to see the other side.
He wants the other side. So you can see the facial disc there. So those discs are designed to help to focus sounds or transmit sounds back to the ears. And remember the pinna I talked about? These are, whoops, I don't know if I want to get my finger that close. The pinna, that's that rim that's going around, okay? And that helps to focus sounds also, okay? So the pinna is this around here, just like our ears here, okay? Have the pinna so that we can, if you take your hand up behind your ear there and you bend it around, the sounds, sometimes you can intensify the sound going into your ear. So the pinna on the bird there. So, okay, well, let's see. So, thank you for letting us look at your phyloplumes. Yeah. Okay. And so let's see. And some interesting things that you should know about. Birds sing at a higher frequency in urban environments in order to escape the lower frequency noises. So as you get into urban environments, we have more traffic noise, more lower pitch noise that we humans make. And to compete with that, the birds actually raise their voices, 500 or 600 hertz. What? What's the matter?
Nothing.
Oh, okay. So anyway, so to escape the lower. So usually about 500, yeah. And besides that, remember we talked a little bit about noise sound dissipating as it goes out. The physical structure of cities also plays a role in altering the bird song. So you have different things through the city, but one of the things is you have a lot of hard surfaces which reflect sounds. So so by going up higher in frequency, those high-pitched sounds are absorbed nicely and yet can still be heard by other birds and other critters out there. Okay. Let's see here. I know we got some more pictures. Everybody still awake out there? No questions yet. Okay.
No questions yet.
And then, of course, one of the things that's interesting is that during sleep, birds can distinguish between predatory and harmless sounds. I think I got the can. Birds can. I don't know.
They can.
I'm going to have to talk to my secretary about that. Yeah, okay. They can distinguish between predatory and harmless sounds. And so many birds may rest one half of their brain while they're sleeping, while the other side stays vigilant. In fact, there are some birds actually that long distance flyers actually fly at night with half of their brain open and half of it closed. And as I know in talking to some of our police officers, we got a lot of birds on the road at night. Yeah. Half a brain open, half a brain closed. So anyways, so they're constantly surrounding for possible threats. And of course, we humans have a similar thing, because when you're at home, mom can hear the baby crying, dad can't, or somebody can hear somebody rattling the front door, and immediately up, or geez, the furnace sounds different or something like that, and dad wakes up. So the different people are tuned to different things. Okay, so the same way with the birds are vigilant. Even like during the daytime, we'll go out and if we find an owl roosting, you'll actually see him sitting there, and every so often, about once every 10 seconds, his one eye will crack open a little bit, look around, and then go back to sleep. So they're vigilant. They're listening. They always have to be. So all animals are on the alert for predation or potential predation. Oh yeah, I know. So, and of course, one of the big things about birds, particularly the owls, you know, catching prey, is directivity of the sound. So there are neurons in the auditory centers of the brain that are specially tuned to intensity and timing differences between the two ears. So basically what they do, just like we do, you know, we hear a sound and the neurons track the sound and they say, oh, it's coming from over there because right ear's getting a whole bunch of sound, left ear's not. So until we adjust our head, so the neurons know, you know, not only do they know that, but they also, we can detect the timing difference between the two ears. So in other words, the sound reaches our right ear first and then our left ear. Or if it's over that direction, then it's our left ear first and then our right ear. So there's actually a time difference between the two ears. The bigger your head, the longer the time difference, okay? Or the smaller your head, and we're going to talk about that later. The smaller your head, the shorter the time distance, okay? So that's one of the things, but this is only for us. We basically work in a horizontal plane, okay? So basically things are out in front of us, left, right, that kind of thing, and maybe just slightly up and down. But when it comes to vertical sounds, humans don't do as well, okay? It's harder to detect where sounds come that are above our heads or below, okay? And so what we have there too is, in the vertical dimension, different frequency profile of sounds caused by the size of your head, okay? We talked about that because the distance across there. And also on your external ear, the pinna here. So if you have your ears flat back, you can't detect the sounds as well. But if they're up like this, you know, if your ears are sticking out like a donkey, okay, you could, you know, you can hear the sounds better. So, and you can detect the, you know, so quite often, you know, you're trying to detect where sounds come from, you cup your hands around your ears and you can move your head back and forth. So this is essentially what our owls do. Don't you? Okay. Yes. What? Okay. So here's a barn owl, okay, head, and there, we tried to get Monet to come over and get his, you know, but he wouldn't let us look at his ear. So, so anyway, so here's a barn owl head, and here's their ear hole, very, very large, you know. Like I said, if, well, you know, look at the size, almost the same size, maybe even larger than my ear hole. So here's their ear hole, here's the pinna around here, here's the phyllo plumes out here for focusing the sounds back into here. So not only do the owls have this arrangement, so actually they can actually move this pinna back and forth a little bit to help them discover where the sounds are coming from. Right, Monet? You know, okay. He's not paying attention. He knows all this. So, yeah, it's almost instinctive, isn't it? But one of the things that owls have is something that we humans don't have. They have asymmetrical ears. We humans have symmetrical ears, and this is very nice to have, you know, for, like I said, in the horizontal plane, but it doesn't help us very much in the vertical plane. So they have ear openings that are not only asymmetrical, but also different shapes. Okay, so they can tune in better on the frequencies. So here we have a barred owl skeleton. I don't know if you can see that well. And if you look there, you can see where the opening is for the right eye or right ear, and then for the left ear. So they're basically offset from each other, and that gives them the ability to catch the sounds differently. And so each ear catches different frequencies of sound, you know, because they're slightly different shapes, and they you know, of course, then the information, of course, goes to the eardrum, and then the eardrum goes to the coma, and then to the cochlea, and then to the nerve endings, and into the brain where it's processed. So they have asymmetrical ears. Most of the owls do. Little screech owls and some of the smaller owls don't, because there isn't enough room. So they're kind of stuck with their ears horizontal like ours, or symmetrical. And of course we talked about, this is Leo, long-eared owl. okay, that he lived with us for a while. So nice big facial disc, okay, and we looked at the facial disc already on what's his name, Chewy, on
Chewy.
Chewy, and also on Monet. So big facial disc helped to focus the sounds back into the ears, and again the philo plumes. And of course, one of the things that owls have, you didn't know we did that to them, huh?
That's great.
So anyways, so one of the things, adaptions that the birds of prey have, in fact most birds have, and that is they have twice as many vertebrae in their neck that we have. We have 4 vertebrae. You know, if you're a mammal, mouse, giraffe, human, you got 7 vertebrae. If you're a bird, you go up to about 14. Okay, so 14 vertebrae. So when you're out there looking for that prey and you hear it, you know, so sometimes you just take your head and just turn it almost completely over.
Yeah.
So, you know.
I see Chewy doing that, and I'm like, what? How far back can you make that head go?
So Chewy can do that, huh? Yeah, so these guys can do that. So that's kind of neat, you know. So they can move their head around to track sounds, you know, so not only horizontally, but vertically. So it's really a neat process.
Get a shot of all those vertebrae here.
Yep, you can get those vertebrae in the back there. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11. Good grief. There's 14 of them there.
Amazing.
But there are some other interesting things, some odd things. This is a little bird called a plains wanderer. It stands about 8 inches tall. It's a relative of the quail family. And it lives in Australia in the outback area, actually kind of the prairie areas, if you will. And this bird has a very low frequency call. In fact, when you go out there, you can hear them. Woo, woo, woo. And why do they have a low frequency call like that? There's 2 reasons. They have, one is that the low frequency usually can't be heard by mammals, okay? So like dogs and cats and things like that. So it's a lower frequency call. But remember that I told you about sound dispersion at distance? As the lower the frequency, the further the sound travels. So this sound can travel like almost a mile before it's dissipated. So he's walking around, he's looking for a mate. You know, so
No mate here.
So it's really interesting that this little bird can generate that sound. But the other thing that's interesting is the bird is so small and his ears are so small. How does he detect a frequency that's that low? Well, okay. It has a very interesting adaptation. It actually has a tube that runs from one ear to the other ear. So when the sound comes in, it goes all the way across the head to the other ear. And so what happens is you have the sound coming in from the left and the sound coming in from the right, and it's partly a cancellation, if you will, okay, or a summation, depending on how the sounds come, that allow the bird to get direction, okay, directivity. So here's a unique adaptation, you know, by such a little bird like this. So, but again, the lower voices, like the eagle owls, the great horned owls, some of those guys, travel for long distances, particularly going along the ground, okay? They're not intended to go up in the air, they're intended to go along the ground, and they can travel long distances because of low frequency. In fact, if you go out to Africa, if you're lucky enough, and you stand there, you can hear the elephants, and they have a very low frequency, around 20 hertz. So it's a, and you can feel it passing through your body, okay? So you can feel that, but it travels for miles so that other elephants know that it's there. Also, to warn humans to get off the road, there's elephants coming through. So very low frequencies, very interesting adaptation. Penguins, okay. This is macaroni penguins, okay, down the Antarctic. And one of the things is that these guys dive down in the water to go get fish. Well, if you've been a swimmer or a scuba diver or whatever, you know there's pressure on your ears. So to prevent damage there, they have a, what do they call that thing? They have a special organ inside your ear. It's called a carbonous tissue that actually swells up. As they dive, there's
Wow.
pressure put on that, and it actually swells up to equalize the pressure on the outside, so that so that their ears don't pop. You know, I guess they pop. I don't know. They would implode. You know, be pressured. You know, so that's one of the things that's sort of an interesting adaptation of hearing. You know, one of the other things that I haven't mentioned on here is how, you know, you get some noisy birds around. You know, we got like our blue jays, roosters, stuff like that. How do they prevent hurting themselves? Because they have very loud voices. How do they prevent hurting themselves? Well, just like us, all right, just like us, they have this little tube that comes up, this eustachian tube that comes up. And so when we're talking, all right, we block off the sound going to our ear. Same way with the blue jays. So when they open their mouths, they close off the eustachian tube, all right, and they prevent damage to their hearing. So another adaptation. Nature is just so wonderful, you know, just so fascinating, you know. And one of the things in researching this a little bit, some of my ornithology books are like 20, 25 years old, and a lot of the stuff we know now didn't exist back 25 years ago. So, you know, so a lot of thought has changed over what exactly it is that we scientists or other people, engineers, whatever, have learned, okay, about things over the years. Our perceptions have changed, and we've been able to analyze, and a lot of that has come through observation. Going out there and actually looking at animals in the field. Just don't look at the animals in the cage. The animal in the cage is partly habituated, partly in an artificial situation, but when you go out in the field and they're behaving naturally, you know, so it makes a lot of difference. So a lot of observational work has been done, and a lot of thoughts have all changed. So, and let's see, what else? I know. This is an oil bird. They're found down in northern South America. You'll find them on some of the Caribbean islands. And these guys use echolocation. So, you know, we only think about bats using echolocation or dolphins and things like that. But actually, this bird uses echolocation to find its way in the cave. But unfortunately, or fortunately, whichever, this bird is a relative of the nighthawk, okay, which we have around here. You hear those guys at night down there around the parking lots. Well, this guy has this about the same frequency sound, and he uses it to locate himself and avoid running into the walls and things like that. However, because the frequency is so low, it can't refine small objects. Okay, so the more definition that you want on an object using sonar or radar or whatever, the smaller you have to make your little wavelengths to detect smaller objects. So he can see something about the size, about maybe 2.5 inches across them. Okay, and so he can resolve those things. But anything much smaller than that, he can't resolve. But anyways, it's interesting that here you have the oil birds. There's also some of the swiftlets that are found over in Asia that also use echolocation in the caves to get around. They're a little bit higher pitch sound, but again, you know, so there's all kinds of things to know about the birds. And so I've only touched on it briefly. I don't know how much time I've run out of, but you know, I can talk for hours about birds. I love birds.
We do.
So, no questions. Boy, I did another good job. You know,
No questions.
yeah, Chewy there is falling asleep. Okay.
Yes.
He says, I can't believe this. So questions, please? No? No? Okay. So anyways, a couple things. Sue, you in there? No, I thought she came in. Okay. She didn't come in.
Here she comes.
Here she comes. Hey, Sue.
I'm not wearing a red shirt.
Oh,
so I
it's
can't-
okay. Okay. Keep your shirt on. Come on in.
That's why I don't do that.
Let's not do that. So, anyways, well, thank you for the big sale you had this weekend. I know it's a lot of hard work. So, how well did we do?
Yes.
We did really well. Like $880 well. So
Wow.
thanks everybody for coming out, and thanks to everybody that helped, because we couldn't have pulled this off without all of you. So
Oh.
yeah.
Well, thanks, Phil,
Yeah,
for
yeah,
doing
thank
that.
you.
Thank
So
We
you.
that's-
still might get a few more. I've still got some items. Anybody
Yeah,
want to?
I know I got some IOUs outstanding out there somewhere.
Yeah, we got a couple IOUs.
Okay. So, no, really appreciate it. That was a lot of hard work, you know, and You know, and we're saving some of the stuff over for a garage sale later.
Yep, the details will be coming about that, and it'll be October 3rd, I think is when it is, that weekend. So
Okay.
we'll have some more information about that.
Okay, so we'll get the word out there, you know, get everybody to, you know, if you have a few more items, now these have to be good items. That we're not hauling away your trash or anything like that. We'll do it for a fee, but we're not taking your trash.
Yeah, really.
A big fee.
Healthy fee.
Yeah, but yeah, if you have some nice things, you know, some unused sweatshirts maybe, or you know, because winter's coming on. A lot of my birds have already passed. My orioles are gone. The hummingbirds are all stoking up.
My grosbeaks are gone now.
Yeah. So and I had my first purple finch show up in the theater. So winter's coming, guys.
Yeah.
I know there's a couple of early birds, you know, that are getting in, but you know, but I've also looked at the woolly worms, and they're black. And so if you go by the old Farmer's Almanac or whatever, you know, black woolly worms means it's gonna be a cold winter. You know, and I mean they're solid black all the way across. They're not just the segments. These are like black. So.
Oh.
So anyway, so it sounds like we're gonna have a bad winter. So stock up on those sweatshirts. You know, we got a few of those, but we also have some nice knickknacks.
We have some knickknacks. We still have a stroller, a couple pieces of furniture. So we have a couple big ticket items. Anybody have twins out there? We have a really nice jogger
Oh,
stroller.
that's a nice stroller. That's a super duper.
It's a super one.
Yeah.
That's a super one.
Yeah.
Is it one of the ones you can run behind?
Yep.
Okay,
Yeah.
so Dad can get exercise, pushing
Yeah.
the stroller. You know, give Mom a break. Okay, so yeah, come on in there and get it. So good.
Oh, Chewy might like it.
Yeah.
Well, no, you just get a bicycle, put Chewy on the handlebars, and just drive
Yep.
down there.
Yeah, he sits on the in the basket.
In the basket, yeah. So okay, well, thank you. Okay.
You're welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you,
Wait a
sir.
minute, where is it?
Oh,
I'm just kidding. Okay, so that's one of the things that we're doing. And guess what? We have the new calendar coming out. Okay, the 2021 calendar. All right, with all our pretty birds on there. And this is the nice cover to the calendar that was designed by Gigi. And so a few of the birds that did make it into the calendar have shown up. And this is a much nicer calendar than the one that we were going to do, the men of Soarin Hawk. But we decided, well, maybe not this year.
gee whiz.
Yeah, hard to imagine, huh? Yeah, one old
I don't
gray
want
guy's broken down. Yeah, but anyways, so if you're interested in the calendar, they're $15 a piece, and you can order them. Do it quickly, okay? So you can go there. Let's see, it's the donor box, okay? And so Soarin Hawk Raptor calendar 2021. That's a long.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a long thing there. So anyways, but if you go to donorbox.org, but you have to put in the Soarin Hawk
Yeah,
thing.
I will. I'll put the link in the comments
Okay.
because it looks like they forgot it's funny spelling of Soarin, so
Oh, they sure
want to
did,
make
didn't
sure
they?
everybody gets
I
the
don't know.
link right.
SOAR. There's something missing there. There's an
Yeah.
I missing. Okay.
But as long as the link works, doesn't matter how it's spelled.
Right, yeah. So anyways, so that's a thing we can do. So if anybody has, next week we have Mariah Russell, who's our vet tech. She's going to come in, and we're going to talk about what we do to our birds. When the intake protocol, what we do for them, how we treat them, and that kind of thing. And so you get a better idea of what happens to the birds when we get them. I think you've seen everything about going through the rehab and the flight pens and all those things. So now it's time to see what happens. And so we can show you how we take care of the birds when they initially come in. So do we have anything else we need to talk about or should talk about? Somebody asked a question, or is everybody going to sleep?
They're watching, no questions.
They're watching and there's no question. Boy, I did another bang up job. Okay, so
Stellar job.
another stellar job. So anyways, here's listening to the birds, and I do love birds. So I'm going to say goodbye, and next week we'll be back, and again, Mariah Russell will be here, and she'll be talking about how we treat the birds when they come in, how we medically care for them, and how we get them ready to go on their way. Right? Thank you, and goodbye from Huntertown, Indiana, and I didn't say any bad words this time either. Did I? No.
All right, thanks,
know you're waiting
everybody.
for it.
No, we're not. Bye, everybody. Thanks for tuning in.
Bye.
Bye-bye.